Preds rookie camp is underway, and there's a big spotlight on two players in particular, Yaroslav Askarov and Spencer Stastney. We'll talk about whether they have proven enough to get an NHL chance next season, plus hockey in Atlanta, take 3. There's some talk that the NHL might consider putting another team in the ATL. We'll get into that today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, want to start with a special hello to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys. We appreciate the support you give us week after week. I'm Nick Morgan. I am a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
Want to mention today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And we are getting closer to actual hockey. And we have actual hockey players on the ice this week with Preds rookie camp going on underway right now.
Yes, this is one of my favorite things. Development camp, rookie camp. I love these two opportunities to see kind of these young prospects. Rookies were on the ice yesterday for their practice. They flew yesterday afternoon to Florida, where they're going to take part in the Southeast Rookie Showcase. First game is this afternoon, 3 p.m. Central Time. It'll be on the Nashville Predators website for anybody who wants to watch it. But it is such an exciting chance to see these young prospects. And look, it's been a long time since the prospects were so important to this franchise as far as the direction they're headed. Like, all eyes are on these young rookies because, look, Nashville's looking at their youth to take over the lead. So it's such an exciting time. And of course, who does not adore the baby Preds? Love them.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the deepest the Predators prospect pool has been. Maybe since like the early to mid 2010s when, Ryan Ellis and Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, Seth Jones, a lot of those people were kind of just starting to get NHL minutes, Philip Forsberg as well. And, as you mentioned, this is a pivotal time because the Preds traded away a lot of veteran players kind of with the idea in mind to open up spots for some of these prospects that are ready to go. Whether the guys that are in camp yesterday or some of the guys, like Phil Tomasino, who have been in Milwaukee for a while. So this seems to be, absolutely critical juncture in the Nashville Predators. And that's why it seems like there's more attention on this year's rookie camp than, probably in recent years. And one of the headliners, Ann, is the guy who a lot of people kind of have atop that prospects ranking, and that's goaltender Yaroslav Askarov.
Oh my gosh. You and I were talking before we recorded, and I'm like, I've got to take it down a notch. Yeah. But it is so hard not to adore him on and off of the ice. And we got a chance to see Askarov in net at the practice yesterday, and then got a chance to talk to him afterward. And he is so impressive, both on and off the ice. This is a young player with a ton of promise. Look, he is one of the top goaltending prospects in the entire NHL. Very different. He is a little bit unconventional with his play, I think. Personality-wise, he is the lollipop guild of PK Subban. Like, he's just so precious is the only word I can think of. And I don't mean that in a condescending manner. He is just so precious. But I think Yaroslav Askarov is somebody who other teams are going to be watching at this rookie showcase because he has generated a ton of buzz from the moment he was drafted to when he got here in North America and then taking the Admirals into this deep playoff run. There is a lot to watch and a lot to like about Yaroslav Askarov. So
Yeah.
much to like, y'all.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't privy to our pre-show discussions, Anne was basically more or less in no uncertain terms wishing to officially adopt Yaroslav Askarov as the fourth Kimmel child. So we'll let us know if that paperwork ever goes through.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he is just 6 feet some inches of sheer delight.
Yeah.
He is just sheer delight. And what he has been through over this past year, I have so much respect for him. You know, he really, we talked with Karl Taylor yesterday too, and he spoke about Yaroslav Askarov. And look, let's take an honest look at what this young man has had to do. You know, he comes in very high expectations here in Nashville and across the league for him. He comes to a new country, new culture, new language, you know, North American hockey that he has not played before. He is, 20 years old. And just that off ice transition is tremendous. That it's a lot for somebody to do, but to be able to do that and to make the adjustments to North American hockey and to play the style of play that he does and to be as successful as he was, in his regular season, he had a .911 save percentage, postseason with Milwaukee, .903 save percentage. This is a young man who has done so much with the opportunity he's had this past year, and it was hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It was a hard year. So mad props to Askarov for everything that he had to tackle this season.
Yeah, not only, coming to North America for the first time and kind of adjusting to hockey life over here and learning the language and, kind of like a new league and everything like that. But reminder that he also didn't play a lot of hockey in the 2 years, between the Preds drafted him and when he came here last year. So I think it's the amazing thing about Askarov is a lot of people went into last year saying, look, like, let's not put expectations too high on him. There's going to be a learning curve. And you did see it. You saw moments where, there's a lot of times where it's like, that's, didn't exactly, shake off that bad performance or that's kind of a big mistake he's making there. But at the same time, you mentioned his stats. Overall, I think a lot of people were kind of blown away with what Askarov did in year one. And now we're going into year two. He split time last year with Devin Cooley kind of going back and forth as, the top guy. Troy Grosneck's down there in Milwaukee now, but it seems like Askarov is going to be the guy, get the bulk of starts from Milwaukee. And this really is his, in my mind, and his tradition or audition for what's probably going to be a full-time role with the Nashville Predators next season. If he goes in there and has another big year in Milwaukee, maybe UC Saros or Kevin Lankinen get hurt this year. He comes in, spot starts a little bit, looks fine. That's when I think the Preds are going to have that conversation. It's like, look, this is a guy that's ready. Like, we are ready to make him part of the Predators rotation.
Yeah. And I agree with what you're saying about how important this next year is. Karl Taylor addressed that when talking about Askarov. And he said the important thing for him is to stack onto what he's done. He had an incredible season, like you said, got a ton of starts, got a ton of experience in net, really kind of got more comfortable with North American hockey with his role on the team. But you have to build on that. And I think that's what they're looking for from Askarov. I think we all know that he has the talent. Like I said, he's unconventional, but he is very, very talented. But can he start where he left off and add to that? And I think that's what Karl Taylor's really hoping for and really focusing on when looking at developing Askarov this next season is let's start where you left off and continue to improve things like execution, decision-making. And if he can do that, I agree with you. Kevin Lankinen's contract is up after this season. Does this mean, is this season the season where Askarov says, hey, look, I'm ready. put me in the NHL. Put me in, coach.
Yeah. And this is a topic we've talked about before, but how well he does this year, maybe how well he does in some sort of NHL stint. Maybe that determines UC Saros's future in Nashville too. So it's going to be an interesting season for Askarov. As we mentioned, Preds in the rookie showcase in Florida right now. A lot of rookies on the roster in camp right now in goal, but I would imagine Askarov's going to get a ton of minutes, and I think a lot of people are going to be watching to see how well he does. The same thing can be said for another player who got NHL minutes last year and absolutely thrived with those minutes, and that's Spencer Stastney. It's a loaded defense for Nashville, but could he potentially throw his name in competition for an NHL role out of camp? We'll talk about that next, but first want to mention today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season is finally here, folks, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. That's because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. For instance, you think the Tennessee Titans are going to win the Super Bowl this year? Number one, bold take. Number two, if you put a bet on the Titans, you get bonus bets for every victory they get. Those are bonus bets you can use on spreads, player props to how many rushing yards is Derrick Henry going to have, over-unders on the game, and much, much more. If you want to check it out, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Anna, we are talking about Nashville Predators rookie camp. And one player there right now is Spencer Stastney, somebody who already has some NHL experience under his belt with a very good stint with the Nashville Predators. Last year came up towards the end of the season when, everybody and their mom was hurt. 8 games, 2 assists, and a +5 ranking. Got even some special teams minutes, and it's funny because Spencer Stastney, you look at this Nashville Predators team, and God, this defense is loaded. Like we talked about, there's like significant people, who earned significant minutes last year that might be left out of playing time this year. And yet, here comes Spencer Stastney, excelled in his first season in Milwaukee, excelled in his first call-up in Nashville at the end of last season, got a lot of trust with both his teammates and coaches at the time. Is it out of the question that maybe a good camp puts him in mind for, a roster spot?
It's so interesting to me when we're talking about this defense, and it's something you and I have talked about before. Lots of talent. How do you put it all together? And maybe there is a scenario in which we see Spencer Stastney again in an NHL uniform. Like you said, he got called up when everybody and their brother was out with injury. But I think what he did with that time and what he did with the Milwaukee Admirals last season, I think that he is a player who would be at the very top of the list of call-ups if something were to happen injury-wise, if something isn't jiving. He's a player who the Nashville Predators may say, hey, you know what, we have an option to plug this kid in and see what's happening. And that's kind of where the Predators are. It's low risk, potential high reward to make some of those decisions. And I think Spencer Stastney is one of those players who is going to be in the mix for somebody who they may pull out of the hat and say, let's just try this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You look at the Preds defense and there's Barrie, Carrier, Fabro, Yossi, Lazan, McDonough, and now Luke Shen. There's 7 people right there already with meaningful NHL minutes. Right. And so it seems like there's a logjam there, and there's enough of a competition with those 7 that maybe Spencer Stastney's destined to start in Milwaukee. But I'm curious because there's a lot of people that I mentioned that weren't all that impressive last season. And it's funny,
Right.
Barry Trotz is preaching competition. He's preaching giving, like rewarding young players if they step up and prove their role. Like, let's say the defense isn't clicking at the start of the season or even in camp. Like, let's say, whatever configuration they have isn't working. Maybe a certain player is not taking either a big step forward like they want, or maybe has taken a step back. It's not out of the question the way Spencer Stastney played last year and kind of his upside and say, look, like let's give this guy a shot, and not just as, kind of a rotation guy. Like, let's plug him into a role and
Yeah.
see how well he can do. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, at some point early on, like earlier than maybe one would expect, if things don't go well out of the gate for Nashville.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think he's somebody they're going to keep in the back of their mind if they need just a different spice in there. He may be the guy they do. Here's what is so great about where Spencer Stastney is. This is a win-win season for him because he has proven that he can hold his own in the NHL. Now, granted, very small sample size. So what can he do with more ice time? But you've got somebody who has had some NHL minutes. Even if he doesn't make it into the Nashville Predators roster, this is a guy who's going to play a ton of minutes in Milwaukee. And his experience that he is gaining is only going to benefit Nashville, down the road. Whether he gets a chance this season or not, we've talked about will Tyson Barrie be back? What are the Predators going to do with Fabro and Carrier, who are both, their contracts expire or they're free agents after this season? So there is nothing but positive opportunities here for Spencer Stastney, whether they happen with the Nashville Predators or whether they happen with the Milwaukee Admirals. This is a great place to be if you're Stastney.
Yeah. And in the end of 2022, Spencer Stastney came in just sort of like on a tryout with the Milwaukee Admirals after his career at Notre Dame. Walked up, so he wasn't part of Admirals in the playoffs in 2022. But last year, different story. He was, a mainstay on that Admirals blue line, and then took his game to another level in the postseason. When Milwaukee was making their run. And you talked to him yesterday, Ann, and he talked about that postseason experience in Milwaukee, maybe boosting his game a little bit, something that he can take into camp now. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Yeah, I think it's never easy playing that deep into a season, especially coming from college hockey where we're playing maybe 40 games and suddenly we're in June and we've doubled that. So I think it's just learning how to be a pro, how to take care of your body, and just keep giving it every night, even when maybe you're not feeling your best.
That with that deep postseason run, you had a kind of a shorter off season. How did you balance rest, recovery with also keeping up with your training and being ready to keep taking next steps?
Yeah, I think now that this is like my job, it was a different feeling in the summer where you got to keep going. You got to like focus on what you're eating, how you're sleeping, and like your mental health really. So it's definitely shutting it down after the season for a little bit, enjoying time with family, traveling a little bit, but then ramping it up here now that we're closer to the season.
Yeah, and I don't care if it's NHL, AHL, juniors. It's a different beast playing in the postseason. You hear a lot of players, like Jack Hughes last year for New Jersey basically said, after the Devils got crushed the first couple games against the Rangers, said, look, I really wasn't prepared, for kind of a playoff atmosphere. Like, that's not something I'd ever really experienced before. That's a tough test. And Stastney, you heard him mention, it's not just getting the postseason experience, but learning how to transition from the postseason into an off season, like, shorter recovery calendar, all that. That's something that I think takes some players a while to really experience. And I think that benefits him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think everything that he has done with the opportunities he's been given over this last year, I think he's done a great job of capitalizing on the chances that he's had. He has done a great job embracing what the development staff is telling him, what they're doing in Milwaukee. He pointed out he went from playing NCAA hockey where he had, 40 some games to playing almost twice that many games last season. That's a huge learning curve, but I think he's really embraced that opportunity and embraced what he has been taught through the Predators development staff. Like, how am I going to do this? How do I become a professional? I really love the maturity of Spencer Stastney on and off the ice. Again, I was really impressed with his NHL time. Love his skating. I think he's a very smart defensive player. Again, small sample size, y'all, but I love the direction he's headed. And I think this is a player to keep your eye on, whether it is this season in Nashville or a season or two from now. Spencer Stastney has a lot to offer this team.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see him perform in not just rookie camp, but preseason for the Nashville Predators, because I think he is somebody that the Predators are going to take a long look at. Again, maybe not saying he's going to make the roster right out of camp, but I think if he's impresses the team enough, he's going to be maybe the first person the Preds turn to if things don't quite go well with that, 7 defenseman core that they have right now. Well, 12 years ago, the NHL yeeted out of Atlanta for the second time, seemed to close the door on hockey in Atlanta. Maybe not. Is the NHL possibly planning a third Atlanta franchise? We'll see what we think about that in just 1 second.
First, want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Jace Medical. Look, several years ago, my husband and I did some international travel. And while we were overseas in Latvia, I ended up getting very, very sick. Of course, didn't have access to a doctor. I couldn't get prescription medicine. I just really had to muscle through it until we could get home. But it doesn't have to be like that anymore, thanks to Jace Medical and their Jace case. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use, gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have your medication in hand. And it's very simple. They handle everything from an online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery, and they provide ongoing consultation and care. So you do not have to be caught unprepared. You can save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using our code LOCKEDON at checkout at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com, jacemedical.com, promo code locked on.
All right, Ann. So apparently the dream of the Atlanta Thrashers Part 2, not quite dead yet.
No.
This, according to ESPN earlier in this week, in an article by Greg Wyszynski, he talked to NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly, asked him about the possibility of an expansion team in Atlanta. Bill Daly, important to note, said it's not expansion anywhere is not really a priority for NHL right now. But he did say this about Atlanta. He said he thinks a lot of the challenges that they've seen in the past in Atlanta can be overcome. He also said there's been, the market demographic has changed drastically since, both the first time they went there in the 70s and 99. He mentioned, a lot of bigger businesses, more sponsorship opportunities there. And there is potential of a new arena deal, maybe more in the suburbs, away from the 1.5 hour commute down the street.
Yes.
Right there near Centennial Olympic Park. So it sounds like they're optimistic that Atlanta's not quite out of the, consideration for NHL expansion. What say you, Ann? Is third time going to be a charm for a fellow deep South, mid-South hockey team here?
I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I think that Daly makes some good points. It's a very different demographic. I think you have learned what doesn't work, like location, I think is huge. That doesn't work. I think it's a different demographic. I think the NHL has learned a lot since the last iteration of Atlanta having a hockey team about doing expansions. Like I think they've learned a lot since then. Look at what Seattle has done. Vegas. So I think it would be a different experience. I think they've learned a lot. You put that together, you could have maybe a more successful opportunity here. Here's my question for you, though. Geographically, is this where you want to go?
I mean, but that's a big market. It's a top 10 media market. In
Yeah.
that, I mean, there's a lot of people, I think, moving to Atlanta. The demographics are trending younger and younger and younger. So there's, a lot of, I think, younger people who will be looking for something to do. I picture this and like the Swamp King in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where he's talking about building a castle in the swamp, and he's like, he goes, they told me it was mad to build a castle in the swamp, but I built it anyway. That sank into the swamp. So I built it again. That sank into the swamp. I built it a third time. That burned down, fell over, and then sank into the swamp. But the fourth time, son, the fourth time worked. And I picture like, oh, isn't that the story of maybe a third iteration of Atlanta? It's like
Gosh.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to me because you're talking about the demographics, but I think Nashville is a little bit of a cautionary tale about that, in the sense that if you look at Nashville now, going to Predators games, because Nashville has such an influx of transplants, you see a lot of other team jerseys. And I'm like, is Atlanta going to run into that? Are they going to be able to develop a deep fan base? Because they really are that kind of same city where you have a lot of transplants coming in. So I wonder about that. And then there's
also, let's point out, hockey in Nashville almost didn't work either. So there was a relocation scare for a while and a lot of near empty buildings.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I get it. Great, big market. I get that. Covering a team in a medium market. Like, I get the appeal of a big market, but I'm like, really, this is where you want to go? Can't y'all in Atlanta just jump on the Predators bandwagon, or pick a Florida team, or hit the Carolina Hurricanes? Like, they're close. Do you really need your own?
I do remember, I think the summer after the Thrashers moved to Winnipeg, there was, I think, an event at Bridgestone Arena, and I can't remember if it was like a widespread thing or if it was just kind of a skit with one guy, but they like brought this dude in a Thrashers jersey up, and they like presented him with a new Preds jersey, and it's like, here's your Southern team now.
There you go.
I can't remember if that was like a widespread, like, hey, like, let's try to get these, Thrasher teams, these Thrashers players on the bandwagon, or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, but it's also, and it's 3.5 hour drive. I know it's relatively close, but a lot of people in Atlanta, they're not really
They're not leaving
give a crap about a hockey team in Nashville. I do think there's been some NHL people come from Atlanta, or at least like college prospects and draft picks. There are a lot of people who are very mad about the Atlanta Gladiators down there, especially where their arena is up in Duluth. So that's, they can make it work. I think there's a couple things in mind here. A is they got to put it more in a place where it's not going to take, an hour worth of traffic to navigate to go to a game on a random Tuesday or Thursday night. That's going to be huge. And the other thing is, you just got to kind of make sure that maybe they're a little bit more competitive this time around, because they never won a playoff game as the Atlanta Thrashers. when they were there, despite having some high draft picks. Maybe this time around, with the way the NHL does expansion, very different now. If they can put a competitive team down there, maybe people will jump on board. It's just Atlanta in general is just such a weird sports market. It's a city packed with pro teams, but it's a college town. Those Georgia Bulldogs are going to rule the demographic no matter what. Like, it's going to be that. And then, depending on how well the other teams do, that's I think,
right,
maybe that sort of situation in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they just say, "Hey, we're going to give it one more college try." No pun intended.
There we go. Would you keep the Thrashers name? Would you name them something else?
I love the Thrashers name. I 100% would keep that.
The color scheme, the little powder blue.
Come on.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Thrashers Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Let's do it. That is going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Quick note, starting on Monday, we are back to 5 episodes a week, episodes Monday through Friday. We're going to keep things going with some prospect talk next week and training camp.
Oh my gosh.
It opens next week and a lot of storylines to break down for there. So we will talk about that coming up on next week's shows. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at PenaltyBoxRadio.com. Follow me on Twitter /X at _NSMorgan. That is going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back next week with all new shows. We'll see you then.